Welcome, everybody. Welcome to BREADBOX. I'm your host, Sears Sandy Shortbread. I am joined today by the one and only Darcy Driver.
Thank you.
Fun fact about me, I really hate toothpaste. I
Whoa.
understand that I need it. Yeah.
How do you hate toothpaste?
Always brush your teeth. I don't know what it is. I just don't like it. I brush my teeth, I'm not gonna lie, I do. There's just something about toothpaste that I just fundamentally hate.
Have you tried the children's flavored toothpaste then?
Oh, those are even worse.
Okay.
The kind of toothpaste that the dentist gives you that's like cotton candy flavored. Ooh, still have nightmares about that.
Gotcha. Well, my fun fact is not about me personally, but fun fact, prison is just timeout for adults.
Prison is just timeout for adults.
And so, further background. So, I have the children's Monopoly game for my daughter. She's 5. And instead of go to jail, it's go to timeout. And I'm like, that's exactly what that is. Good job. Good job, Hasbro.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's just like the banish spell. It's not it's just timeout for the fight.
Speaking of timeout, today we're going to be talking about the time when we all couldn't get together, time COVID and the pandemic, and the D&D games, which we played virtually together, where Darcy here was the DM. So, party was mostly spellcasters. We had one...
We're running Icespire Peak for background.
Yes, we were running Icespire Peak. We all had to random roll our race and our class just to get us out of our comfort zones and to be trying different things. And we had a Minotaur paladin named Jim. We had a tiefling sorcerer, Morthos. Human wizard, which was
Diggory,
who was played by myself. And we had a hobgoblin wizard named Jafar, and a dwarf bard by my father, whose name was Nuff. And we weren't known at that point as the Flying Minotaurs. That is what the party would soon become to be known as.
Yeah, so running that was really fun. Like my DM prep was make Excel sheets with all the classes, all the races. They got to pick their subclass once they reached it, but that way they'd all start with the same. Here's what you're gonna roll. And funny enough, to this day, one of the players in our group, I'm running Icespire Peak again right now, and he did the same thing for making his new character. He rolled on that random table and just got rid of anything that he'd played already. So he's currently a Goblin Monk, which is actually very good because Constitution bonus, never a bad thing. Dex bonus, never a bad thing. And then the Goblin's ability to get in and out of stuff instead of eating key points to do that is also very nice.
I think the next party this is a side topic off of what we were just talking about, but I think the next character I play, I want to dump Constitution just to see what that would do. I just want an 8, a 7, maybe a 6 even for Constitution. Just see the effect that'll have.
Just don't be a wizard because they have the lowest hit die. And technically, rules as written, you can level yourself to death unless you're taking average. Average, I don't think you can level yourself to death. Let's say. No, you would. That's awful.
The brave band of adventurers, they were all found themselves in Phandalin. Whether that was for wanderlust, whether that was for adventure, or just wanting money and booze. They were all in Phandalin.
And from there, they picked up the Umbarge Hill quest, which takes them to Lady Adabra and the windmill. They also were going towards the place where the dwarves are, the Dwarven Mine. And so they're going to go warn the two dwarves about the impending dragon attack and try and persuade them back. And so in their travels, instead of just having the encounter for the Manticore be at the windmill only, I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to have them make the fairly rough trek down to the mine, and they can encounter it in the wild. Because it would make sense that it's hunting for food. It goes around in the wild. And instead of just doing random encounters, I'll just plan it.
With most of our characters being mostly relying on spell slots, since we were pretty much, I think, 90% casters. I mean, paladins half casters, but yeah, it was all of us kind of burned our spell slots pretty quick on that first Manticore encounter. It was actually 2 Manticores at once, and I believe they were mates, but it was quite a challenging encounter because a lot of the players I don't think had ever quite experienced challenging flying monsters before, and it definitely was a good way of building out strategy how we would deal with something like that, especially since the big bad at the end of that campaign is a dragon.
And so particularly where you guys were all casters, I went away from the content as written and also did 2 instead of just 1. And it said the content says, oh, you can just run away from this fight or just feed the Manticores. And I did offer you guys that option, but you guys just decided to attack. And it was really weird for me as someone who plays casters and prefers them generally, that all of you just went crazy ham with your spell slots. And it occurred to me, like, partway through, like, they're gonna burn through everything. In this one go, they're gonna burn through almost everything. I think a couple of you had saved one of your level 1 spell slots. You guys pretty much burned through everything.
Yeah.
Because I started level 3, and so that's already higher than that quest is recommended for. And then where you guys were a party of 5, oh, they'll be fine. I'll throw 2 Manticores at them.
I think the only person that didn't waste all of their spell slots and actually kept a couple of their second level spell slots or higher was Nuff, my dad. I think I think he's better at just preserving resources or just resource management in general, because he started out playing in first edition and before first edition with chainmail, and he knows that D&D is a much longer game than just one combat.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us were it had been the first time that a lot of us had played full casters, and we're just looking forward to seeing how these different new abilities worked out and didn't anticipate what would come next.
So after they defeated the first 2 Manticores successfully, they didn't really take that much damage. I think a couple of you took a couple hits, but where your paladin started off with such high AC, I think there was a lot of whiffing at the paladin that went on because he was just verbally taunting the Manticores.
It was, I think the only person that did go down was Jafar, and it's because he was a warcaster. It was his subclass he took. He kind of charged in there with his sword, and he was the one guy that did go down, and that actually kind of plays into why he ended up having a fight with 2 more Manticores later.
So I was verbally hinting as they were traveling. It's cold, it's rainy. If you try and fall asleep without like setting up a tent or being under something, P.S. they had a wagon. That was a cart that was big enough to have people under it, then you're going to have to make at least a check to fall asleep. And so Jafar lit a bonfire, which I then rolled on a table. Well, the table in my head to see, okay, is there another Manticore around? I rolled very poorly for the party, and there were 2. And I'm like, they can definitely see. There's a bonfire going in the middle of nowhere, and these Manticores have been driven away from their home by the dragon. That's as it's written in the content. Granted, I had already made it more then, but I'm like, yeah, they're still fine. They can do this.
Yeah, Jafar's favorite spell throughout the campaign ended up being Bonfire, which I believe was the cantrip that he took. And
Yeah.
it all kind of started with this moment where he was cold, he was wet, he realized that he wasn't going to get the effect of a long rest. He wasn't somehow heated and dried. So while everybody else was cuddling up, I believe, like in the back of the cart, at least people were around the cart, he kind of went off by himself and did that. And I'm pretty sure because he was asleep, Manticores got a surprise round, and they also got auto crits because he was incapacitated. I'm pretty sure he pretty much spent most of that fight just completely down, except for when
it wasn't auto crits, but because it was prone and they were using melee attacks, they just happened to crit.
Right, yeah. And he
that advantage.
The only reason he somehow could take some actions during that fight was because our lovely dwarf bard Nuff kept healing wording him. So he'd be up for like a turn, and then he'd be making death saves after they'd swat him. And then he'd be up for a turn, and then he'd be making death saves because they swatted him.
You guys killed the other two. I believe he at that point went under the cart, got his full rest. Then you carried on with the mine and that quest. And that part was the oozes that are in the ochre jellies rather, they're supposed to be rather trivial because their move speed is so slow. And when you guys entered that room, I described them as moving slowly towards you and attacking. But because they dropped like within, I think it was 10 feet of you, a couple of you stayed in front and didn't just move back and poke them from range.
Yep. I remember Diggory specifically went down to ochre jellies because he tried to use his dagger just to stab at them a bunch instead of back disengaging and then using cantrips from afar.
And when they take slashing damage, they split. So that the paladin of the party was not doing the party favors. He was doing quite a bit of damage. The thing about Minotaur Paladin, which I would definitely recommend it to anyone, is you get that melee attack with your weapon, and then you get the horn attack. So if you're a paladin, you're already nice and close. You got a solid AC, and the horn attack every turn is just so nice. It's an icing on the cake of that class.
I remember he also, even though it wasn't as like much damage if he used his axe or his hammer, I think he had a war hammer at that point. He had the axe. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
I think they'd only multiplied once because I did explain. You see this happen,
right? Yeah. Jim is also the same player who played Ashnod. He loved to smite with his horn attack. Just the idea of having glowing horns on top of his head that he could gore people with. He loved it.
Yeah, and I told him, I'm like, the rules as written say weapon attack, but I like it, so I'm going to let you do it.
Which, in the end, if a player has a creative idea like that, let them have fun.
Just let them. Let your players have fun.
Oh, and if I remember correctly, there was lots and lots of different like secret tunnels and mazes, and our party just got super divided and could not decide after we did the ochre jelly combat where we were going to go. And we were in this room, this almost like old sanctuary at the bottom of the mine. And Morthos, our tiefling sorcerer, who's completely just motivated by money, has this like calling. Was it to a dagger in a column, or was it to a gem in a column? I forget.
It was a gem. You see an expensive gem in a pillar, and that's as written in the module. Dwarven Excavation, that's the name of the quest.
And I remember at some point in that cave, in that mine, he ends up getting the Dagger of Greed.
Yep.
And that kind of just him hiding money or stealing money from the party kind of just was something that was a running theme or gag throughout the whole rest of the campaign.
Yeah, it was never to the point of disruptive, but he was definitely trying to save as much as he could.
Or maybe take somebody's valuables when they were clearly not paying attention and not being good stewards of what they had.
I don't recall any of those offhand, though. It sounds right. Sounds right, but I don't recall.
I feel like I remember at one point, like after that time, Jim or somebody left their money out, like on the table in like where we were staying.
Oh yeah,
Vandalin.
Yeah,
He
that's right.
just snatched the money. I think it was Nuff's money.
Yeah, that sounds right. But anyway, you guys got split up, and then because there's other oozes behind one of the secret doors, you guys didn't weren't all together for that encounter. So you took a bit more damage. I don't think anyone went down. It's just you would have probably literally taken no damage if you had encountered that backed up and just shot at it.
Yeah, the only reason Diggory was pretty much always in the front, it was him and Jim that got shoved to the front, which I don't know why, since Jafar was literally a warcaster wizard that had a shield and better AC. But Diggory got put in the front, and always just that spell, False Life, is the only thing that kept him alive through most encounters.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys got through that, and then you guys went outside. I recall you decapitating the orc leader in that encounter. And I think you guys did manage to save the dwarves, if I recall.
We saved at least one of them.
Right.
No, that was who got decapitated, one of the dwarven brothers, because we threatened the guy who was
Oh,
holding the
yeah.
blade to the throat of the dwarf. We were like a really bad negotiator, and we sent our bard out thinking he was gonna talk him down, but then he ends up ticking him off, and he just decapitates the one dwarven brother.
Yep. Yep.
I remember now when we went back to the town office or whatever to get our bounty, we only got half the bounty because we only saved half the people we were supposed to.
Yeah. That that was pretty funny.